Okay.
And everybody's getting along right now. We don't want somebody put on here who's not.
To rock the boat. Okay, clock says it's 7:30. We'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all of you to the April meeting of the Finney County Economic Development Corporation. Hopefully you've all received your board packet in the mail. Are there any corrections or additions you'd like to make? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I so move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay. All right. Public comments.
Nothing to say.
Nothing today.
Never learn.
Okay. Don't count on a lot of that.
You can tell us about the golf tournament, I guess, if you want to.
Yeah.
Thanks. We're up with Southwest Kansas Builders Association. May 11th, we'll be having a golf tournament. Most of the funds are used to support the community college. And in the last 2 years, we've been given $10,000 to the Construction Trades Scholarship Fund. They've just applied, they've applied for a $3,000 grant. And once the training happens later on this year, they'll get another $3,000 from NAHB. So the Builders Association is here to support the community college construction trades program. So thanks for the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lance.
Okay, next up, we'll hear from our president, Yolanda Duvall.
Good morning. My microphone's slipping, sorry. Prospect 324, we met with the project and broker on March 18th, and we've since had a follow-up discussion with them. Shannon and I did a virtual meeting with them last week. That was just last week. And got word from them that they are intending to move forward with their project. So very exciting. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to make that public within the next couple of months, we hope. They're working on finishing up some other projects that they've got going in other communities, and then we'll turn their attention to this one. Other prospects, we haven't had a lot of follow-up. One that Steve and I have worked on quite a bit, they requested some assistance with getting LOIs, letters of interest, in order for 2 different parcels. So we've gotten them the information they need, and we'll wait patiently, hoping that that will happen. On housing, not a lot to report. We do have projects that are kind of in limbo while they wait to see if they can get the Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credits and or the Moderate Income Housing Grants. KHRC, the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, changed the MIH process this year, so they're only doing 1 distribution of those, which will be in the fall. So that could set some projects back, just waiting to see if they can get some of those dollars. That's a very competitive process. So we are helping a project in Holcomb. We're going to have a meeting with them later today and see if they do want to wait and apply for those funds. I think they'll opt to do that. And then Steve has helped them with some layout questions, and we'll also help them through the RHID process with the city of Holcomb. So good stuff happening there. Hunter's Glen, they did submit for their next round. And he's also working on some additional marketing tools and such. He's been in touch with Steve to get information on where they might be able to put some fixed advertising, like billboard type advertising for those units. And lots of meetings this month. It was a very busy month. Sligo Station is really heating up, if you will, from both the design standpoint and from the financing standpoint. So we've been involved with their underwriters and with the design team, getting everything ready. We did have a preliminary site plan review with the city on that project. That's a pretty technical project just because it is sitting in the middle of everything being developed around it. So we're really pleased to have a very, very professional, talented team working on the site layout and getting that all in front of the city. And the city staff was excellent to work with on that. Workforce meetings, I'll let Grant talk a little bit about a couple of the special things we're doing. But one of the goals that the City Commission had this year was to get more involved in workforce development and mostly in welcoming workers and helping them to get engaged in the community so that we hopefully keep them in the community. So Derek Ramos, one of the assistant city managers, had reached out to me and said, will you help me with this workforce thing? And I said, surprise, we already have the whole workforce thing. We just would have to bring it off the shelf. So we are reinvigorating the Finney County Workforce Connection, and we've had a couple of meetings so far. The county attorney has gotten really involved in that, which is awesome. Susan's been doing just a tremendous job of recruiting interns and employees for the county attorney's office, which is not an easy task in this environment. We're not producing, kind of hard to believe, we're not producing enough attorneys, and certainly getting attorneys to come out to the rural areas can be a real challenge. So she's done a tremendous job of getting folks into the community, and now she's asking us to assist in keeping them and getting them interested in coming back to build their careers here. So that's going to be exciting. And again, I'll let Grant talk a little bit more about one of the specific things we're doing with that. Lots of time with USD 457. As I told you, they did ask us to get involved and work with their consultants on their reboundary discussions, and that had turned into school closings, and a multitude of other challenges arose as a result of that. So Shannon and Matt and I have visited with them. Matt and I sent a letter to the Board of Education as well as a map showing where all of the future housing development is slated to be, how sure we are of those projects, timeline of when we think those projects might develop. And then they asked that Matt and I be there for their last board meeting. Last Monday, we were there. They didn't really have any questions. Shannon and I did meet with 3 of the board members, 2 of them, and then one in another meeting, who are actively engaged with the boundary committee, and shared information to ensure that they knew what the immediate future is looking like for housing, and why housing matters for school. Obviously, the more housing, the more opportunity for families to live here. Shannon is going to present quite a bit of information about that, so I won't go into a lot of detail on the actual report, but I will say that, I think communication in these types of situations is always key, and certainly there was pushback from community members saying, how can you assume our school population is going to decrease when our community has the growth that we have? So we would concur with that, but like I said, I'll let Shannon go through more of that information. We did get a call that's kind of interesting from a couple of high school students at Scott County Community High School. They were working on a project in one of their dual credit courses through Garden City Community College, and they called and said, we heard you're the expert on housing. Okay. Well, no, but I'm happy to pretend to be an expert if you need help with your project. So it was really nice. We did a virtual meeting with them, and for everybody who says the next generation is a mess, I would just tell you, they're doing okay. We've got some really good young people who are really paying attention and want to be a part of good things in their community. Those 2, I asked them what their future plans were. They're both seniors. One of them is going to college to be a teacher. Thank you. And the other is going to school to be a nurse. And both of them said they're pretty sure they're going to end up back in the area, probably back in Scott City. So that's exciting. It's fun to talk to young people who understand the opportunities around them. So very cool. Things coming up tomorrow. We do have the Southwest Kansas Chambers has put together a a meeting, if you will. They invited Senator Moran, Senator Marshall, and Congressman Mann. I think Congressman Mann is going to stop in for a little bit in the morning. It's a full-day event starting at 8 o'clock and going till about 8 o'clock tomorrow night. But it's mostly just going to be their in-state staff that is available to answer questions for communities and such. So some of the communities chose not to go to Washington, D.C. for our congressional delegation meetings. So they chose to do this in-state event instead. We are still going to Washington, D.C. The city reached out to us as soon as Chambers said they weren't going and said, hey, we still have to go to D.C. So we are still going. We're going in June this year. So that's about all I have for you. Happy to answer any questions.
Any further questions? Okay. All right, we'll hear for an update from Steve Cottrell, Special Projects Director.
Very special.
Very special. There is one benefit to this meeting this early, at this time of year. School zones are not flashing.
Thank you, Steve. Helpful information.
I have to point out some positives.
Have you had some problems with that in the past?
I did. It was back in the early 80s.
I'm going to say they don't enforce too much now.
Yeah. I'm not sure, you might even been a training officer to let that kid write me a ticket.
Probably.
Okay, everybody knows it's Administrative Professionals Day, so
We need one.
we need, yes. It's also National Bucket List Day.
Uh-oh.
And my favorite, Lana and I did an advance run on this one. It's National Scream Day. So we all need, when we're done, we're gonna meet out front.
In the parking
and do a
lot?
Primal scream. That's okay?
I like it.
I do too. Okay, we received one RFP from KDOC, but we could not submit because this prospect is looking for an existing building, although it would have been right up our alley. Hopefully they won't find one and they'll come looking for land. We're still in the running on the one we submitted in February for an international ag equipment manufacturer that's looking to start a small sales and service operation. Unfortunately, the building we proposed is no longer available, so we're looking for another spot. And the recycling prospect, excuse me, we submitted last month is, we learned they're taking a little additional time to evaluate all of the proposals. On the commercial side, I'm working on the next generation of commercial developments. That's plural for purposes. And residential, Randall Estates, all the underground is in. Road work, they're putting gravel down and should be finished with that in the next couple of weeks, and then it's the highway installation, or the entrance pavement. Lost River, there's about 50 feet at the south end of their part of Fleming Street that still needs curb and gutter, otherwise they're ready for asphalt. The cul-de-sacs are both concrete. Black Hills should be starting soon, now that curb and gutter's there. Country Acres is moving and restarting the RHID process with the county. I haven't had any contact with Mr. Spikes. We're available if needed. I worked on some concepts for residential development, including potential MIH and RHID project in Holcomb. Several meetings related to Sligo Station. And then tomorrow, I'm going to do a little training session with the Woodland Electric staking crew on writing legal descriptions for easements that are better than what they've been doing, which is pretty much minimal. So I'll teach them some shortcuts on how to write something a little more definitive. Any questions?
I do have a question, Steve, on the Country Acres. So they're restarting the RHID process, so did they discontinue during
It
that?
got put on hold when there was some redesign of road work
Okay,
in the middle of the contractors actually starting. County Public Works jumped in the middle and didn't like something, so they had to pause, and they just kind of let everything sit and languish. So I think the road work is done now, and
okay.
so it's probably a good thing, because we had a year of no revenue with the RHID, so.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that'll move forward smoothly now. Thank you.
No further questions? Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Next, we'll hear from Scott Ost, Communications Director.
Well, in April, the website views went up, which is good, slowly but surely going up. The device breakdown, more people are tuning in on their phones, mobile devices, and desktops now, as you can see there. Top articles were the Community Foundation Award, awarded some grants, museum lecture series, the college dedicated memorial garden, and Sean Collins and Shannon's guest-a-thon live stream post. Facebook, we had an increased post reach, number of people who saw posts. And the top posts were a magazine recognizing Dr. Ruda for his leadership skills, an alumni spotlight from the college, oral history museum lectures, and a high school senior won a National Shakespeare Award. The Journal had, as they do, 144,000 reach and 1,400 engagements. Shannon's annual April Fool's Day post, although I don't know if it was really April Fool's. And Sean and Shannon's live stream event. Twix, we had an increase in the number of people seeing our posts on Twitter, X, whatever it is. As you can see there, the top posts were the college's theater production, Memorial Garden dedication, and the high school senior at the Kansas Entrepreneur Challenge. Any questions about social media communications?
Interestingly, Twix, the top articles were that high school, community college,
Yeah.
maybe age,
Yeah.
maybe an indicator, I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Next up, Grant Lunenberger, Business Development.
Client 4241, we assisted in helping create an LLC for the business. Client 3242, been a couple talks with this client. The original location that they had in mind for their business was probably not viable, so we presented with a few other options. The client wants to buy instead of rent, so we're still looking at locations and playing with the idea of maybe buying an existing location, and so that client is going to be in talks with a realtor for that. Client 3243, this is a client from Lake Colorado. After I had first initial meeting with them, it was decided it's best to transfer this to another FCEDC member that covers that region. Client 8231, this is an older client. They've been in the works of starting their business, going through their business plan. They were trying to share space with another existing business. I have gotten them in touch with someone that is looking to get them ready to be set up and open to the public soon. And SPDC clients are now at 33. Meetings and initiatives, as Lana was saying, insisting in creating a workforce event for interns to grow connections with each other and the community. So far, we reached out to Joe Coles to help us get in touch with businesses and see what kind of internships are out there and what we can do to bring everyone together. And that's what I have for you.
What is a mobile business?
What is, working out of a truck.
Oh, okay.
They don't have a physical location. Yeah.
They have a physical location, it just moves.
Yeah.
It's just mobile.
Any further questions? Okay. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you.
Next up, Shannon Dick, Director of Analytics.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's a good indicator about how people think about us when people from Colorado come over for business help. You probably need to talk to you guys in Colorado. So all the way to Garden City.
Thanks for thinking of us.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of us. They're probably in town anyway shopping, so. So I'm going to go over and just talk about some of the stuff that we went over at the school board and looking at some of the analysis of the reports that the company did, just to kind of get our mind wrapped around where we're coming from economic development-wise. We're talking about housing build-out and the kind of impacts that we believe that will have on the school district. Here's the map that we produced and gave over. This is a map that was augmented by Steve. It's very nice, and he made it twice, so it's even better the second time that he made it here. So all the things in the light boxes, and we have a chart of this in a second, so you don't have to try to add this up yourself. But everything in the light boxes are stuff that we think are going to be happening with about 80% confidence over the next 3 years. And then we divided out the regions. So in the yellow, you can see like there's east over where Chapel Heights is, and southeast and south. We also named the projects that are a little bit further out for the next 5 years after that. Added it all together, and we come up with this table here. The first part are the ones that are those eminent things where infrastructure is going in, all those grants. We have the MIH grants and stuff like that going in. That's going to be about 986 units that we expect to be built over the next 3 years with about 80% confidence in each of those. And then we talked about those regions over the next 5 years after that, from 2028 to 2033. Which really just sounds like we're talking about the future, not even real dates. But the 5 years after that, there's about 5,000 more units in the pipeline there. Which this is, we talked about this in the office. Our goal first we have 1,000 units being built over the next 3 years. But our goal as city commissioners have a city commission goal of 4,000 units over 10 years, and then us as economic development are having a goal of trying to have 6,000 housing units in the pipeline overall. And you can see that's actually really what we're talking about. We're talking about those goals being hit by the projects that we've laid out. So the steps that we've been taking on for the last couple of years to start to get all these things in the pipeline really has been in there, and we've accomplished that.
Yeah, if you can't read that, there are 6,190 units in the pipeline through 2033 right now. So, good job, FCEDC, you did it.
One of the questions before we leave this slide that the company had that's coming in and doing the stuff at the school district is, well, how many units are going to be built by developers from out of town? Because we know that a city can only build kind of as many as you have been, because there's only so many building crews and stuff like that. So if you go through this and you look at our short term, what's happening now is, with the different groups, about 3/4, about 776 of the units that we have slated coming up very soon are being slated to be built by out-of-town developers. So the majority of the units, the housing majority is local, but when we're talking about apartments and things like that, the majority of those units are going to be built by out-of-town developers. So the workforce issues, where can you build those because you don't have enough framing crews or whatever. That's not really an issue in this because these guys are going to be bringing in their crews like Sligo Station, likely Petra developments and stuff. So that's what we got there. We also can look at the data and see that for every 100 households in Garden City, or in Finney County, we get 62.1 kids in our school district. So we expect for every 100 housing units we build, we should get about 62 kids out of that. And then just, we have the breakdowns right now, what is our school district breakdown? And these are broken down kind of based on the current school breakdowns, K through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 through 12. The school district is looking at going K through 5, 6, 7, 8 as a school, and then 9. So the breakdowns here don't exactly match up with what they're talking about moving the district age breakdown to, but that's kind of how we have right now. So if we go ahead and go apply, and this is a little bit harder to see, but if we go to apply those housing and then apply that, the chances of each of those getting built, 8% or 50% is the bottom, and then our normal kids per unit, and then breakdown per age group, we can get a projection of what looks like for each of those. So for just an example, we can just pull out Columbus Edition at the top there. That should result in about, we should expect about 56 kids coming out of Columbus Edition when that's built up. And so you can go through, and that means over the next 3 years, we expect about 489 kids to be produced through the new housing. And then overall, after everything, about 2,000 new kids. So that's what we're saying. That's the kind of heads up. Like with the housing that's coming along, short term we should expect about 500 more kids, a little less than 500. Long term we should be expecting about 2,000 total more kids. Now, what's the next slide? Okay, so this is the projections that the company, that the school district has hired. This is what they say for the next 5 years. So current enrollment is 6,527. Then they say that it's going to go down to 6,500-ish, 400-ish, 350, 360, 363, 6,360. It kind of just levels out at that number there in their predictions, which means over the next 5 years, they're telling us to expect a minus 167 kid change in our school district. And you can kind of see that's essentially just flat. If I made a chart of what that looks like, that's essentially just flat. So what I did yesterday, which was a lot of fun, if you like looking at the same report over and over and over, I pulled out, I looked at more than 16 of their previous studies. I probably loaded up about 30.
This is the company's.
This is the company's studies. It's been the same study since 2007, just put different data in for different cities. I mean, layouts the exact same and everything. So what I did is I said, okay, well, how accurate are your projections? Because I went back to the ones that are far enough back that I can see what they said the projection was for a school district, and then actually go look at what their enrollment was. So the ones that were back in like 2017 or 2011. And say, okay, how good were you at making your predictions about the school districts? So that's what this chart is. The gray lines are the individual ones. You can see I don't have all the data for all of them. Like that year 4, there's one that stops right at the top. And the higher that is, the further away from the true population they were on their prediction. And it kind of makes sense. The shape that makes sense, you see, year 0, they're right on because that was the actual current year. They just had to count how many kids were there. Year 1, you're going to get a little bit of difference. Year 2, it's a little bit more. Year 3, a little bit more. So what do we expect to see? So we expect to see, I don't know if I have these numbers later on, but you can see as they get further out of time, we expect from their history that by the year 5, they're about 8.5%, 9% off of their projection from reality. And I will say that in the bigger cities that they are doing these things, like Oklahoma City, Des Moines, and not necessarily the city of Des Moines is like one of the little suburbs of Des Moines or a little suburb of Oklahoma City. They actually are pretty accurate. Some of those ones that are down at the bottom, I'm trying not to leave for the camera, but I don't even know if they're looking at me. But the ones at the bottom that are attached to those large school districts or a large community are not too bad overall. But I mean, if you're talking about 30,000 kids in a school district, it's going to be hard to miss by a lot. When we're talking about 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 kids, it doesn't take too much housing going on to get built or whatever is happening locally, for there to be a bump up of students, which is a big percentage to miss. So the smaller communities, they tend to miss more. So if we take this average and what we expect, so if we expect that they're going to predict low, and we think that we're actually going to be higher than that, we expect them to be higher than that, and we just apply the amounts they normally miss after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, after 4 years, this is the population trend that we expect to see here. So we go from 6,527, which is the actual count, that's year 0. Then 6,600, 6,600, we flatten out a little bit, then 6,677, 6,000, whatever, 7, and then 6,902. And that's just applying what they typically do and then a normal error that they have with their reports. Again, we're a smaller community, so that error might even be a little bit bigger than we see typically. But even then, if we just say how much they usually miss, we should say, we'd expect from the reports and from the data they have that they themselves would be in the normal range of positive 375 students. This isn't taking into account any of the housing stuff that we've been talking about that they've been discounting. Now, we go to the last slide. I think this is my last slide. Now if we go in and say, hey, we need to take into account the housing build out, and the fact that we are going to be able to build this housing because it's not just local builders, we're bringing in other people, and this is a different kind of housing stock that we had in the past. So some of the things, the reason that they don't think that we can build housing is they have listed in the report that we only built 7 houses last year, which I'm not sure if that's true or not. Maybe it's a little bit low. But that's the data they're going off of. If we do put in and say that we do have this new housing, and we still have some of those pressures, we're still talking about the pressures of more homeschooling, the pressures of different things that are affecting the public school systems. We still have those pressures in there. You can see the build out there, and what we're saying in the end is over the next 5 years, we should expect a positive almost 1,000 student increase. So that's the kind of things that we're looking at with this. I think that's my last slide, yeah. There's another factor that really hasn't been put into this, and I'm working on that, and that's the composition of our refugee population, which I believe is the true driver of why we see differences in our school enrollment. While we keep on building more and more houses. Our houses are full. We have more people than ever before, but our enrollment's down. One of the things that isn't really being accounted in any of these models is what's the composition of a refugee population that's working at Tyson or in other locations like Tyson. And so when we have groups that are single males coming from a location and working that don't have families, that's one person taking up a job that's contributing no other people to Garden City, no kids to the school district. However, when they move on and we have new groups coming in, and we have one job, but then that person has a family of 7, that's 6 kids, well 5 kids, that they're contributing to the school district. Number of jobs is the same, number of housing is the same, it's just who's coming in. And so I'm starting to work, I just got an email this morning, or last night I guess, from Marcy at Catholic Charities. And we're going to start to dig into that as well so we can understand how the fluctuations that happen at Tyson or places like Tyson results in changes in the number of kids in our school district, because that's just people coming in. That's not something where we're having to do anything different, and it's making potentially a large difference in how many kids our school district has. And so we're talking about capacity for a community like ours with a large migrant and refugee population. We need to make sure our capacity isn't just literally how many kids we have, but also a buffer that says, hey, if we have a different group coming in, that is bringing, instead of maybe half a kid on average, 2.5 kids on average, over 500 employees out of the 3,500 employees, we're talking about an extra 1,000 kids in our school district from just a different migration pattern into Garden City. So our capacity needs to make sure we can account for that without having to go to a bond issue, because we're right now hitting just right at the edge of what our capacity is going to be. Because if we have any growth and we're hitting right at the edge, how are we going to accomplish that? So that's what I've been working on.
This company that has done these projections, did they do the past projections? It's the same company? Okay, so they're using the past data. And the other thing is, are those projections really based on the number of housing units that we've constructed?
They say that they take 40 factors into account when they make the projections. From what I've seen and what they emphasize, number of housing units and the current trend in the school enrollment and the number of babies being born by far is what is the biggest thing. And I think number of housing units getting constructed is, and again, they won't let us look at their model. It's proprietary, they say it's proprietary. I would like to sit down and just say, show me what's going on here so I can understand, and at least we can convey what's happening. So instead, we just have to look at evidence of different things going on. So the thing is, on their data, we have like these, they said we had 40 houses, 7 houses. So we went like this, and they're trying to hit, they take a lot of pride in making sure that before they release their model for the future, they're trying to hit the current year data. So they look at some historic data and try to make that model hit the current year's enrollment with about 100% accuracy is what they try to do, which means most likely they overfit it. So they're trying to make everything fit into what they know right now. And since they reported 7 housing units built overlasting, they're really discounting in their model housing for us, or the potential of housing. So there's a lot of steps that I wish I could go and just see what's going on, to see I'm pretty sure it's a regression that they're doing. I'm pretty sure it's overfitting. I'm pretty sure the way that they talk about it right now, there even might be a negative correlation between the houses getting built and school population. So in their model, we don't know for sure, but the way that they talk, it's possible that for Garden City, the more houses we have built, the less kids are enrolling, which is just makes no sense.
So the number of babies born, is that just in St. Catherine Hospital, or is that in area hospitals also?
They say it's for the people living in Finney County or Garden City.
In Finney County or in Garden City?
What was the question? I'm
The
sorry.
baby data?
Yeah, so the number of babies born for the county, that's a KDHE number, Kansas Department of Health and Environment. That number is supposed to be, according to KDHE, that is supposed to be babies born anywhere who list Finney County as their residence. So those children may be born in a hospital in Denver or Wichita or Kansas City, but they still list Garden City. The other question, then the reverse of that, right, is, well, we know that there's a lot of rural hospitals that don't deliver babies, so a lot of babies are born in our hospital who are never going to be domiciled here. KDHE, their number is supposed to account for that. So a child, for instance, from Leota that happens to be born in our hospital should still be showing up as Wichita County's birth rate, not Finney County's birth rate. Yeah.
This information has been presented to the school board already?
This
has not.
This is all what I did yesterday.
Okay.
But all the housing data and the kids from the housing and all that stuff is stuff.
And they did, the Board of Education did have a work session just earlier this week, and they talked through the fact that they were getting, some conflicting information. They were hearing one thing from the city and economic development and another thing from the consultants and so forth. And, we're certainly not trying to discredit the work of this consultant. I think, as Shannon said, in larger communities, they aren't that far off, at least early on. But we do know that we have unique things happening in our community. People say, well, you haven't built this many houses. No, we haven't, which is why it was a goal of both the City Commission and Economic Development. So, when we said we would have 6,000 units in the pipeline, we knew that not all of those would get developed. So the city had a goal of 4,000. We said we're going to get 6,000 planned and developers available to do 6,000 units, in the hope that, because we know not all of them come out the other end of the funnel, you got to pour more in if you expect to get anywhere close to that number out. So that's what we chose to do. To Shannon's point, 80% accuracy or 80% probability. That is a number that all of us, Matt, Shannon, and me, all of us feel comfortable saying, yes, We should be able to get 80% of those units should happen. So, again, for planning purposes, there's no doubt, and we'll kind of go back to this map, there's no doubt that we have some schools in neighborhoods that are not going to see significant housing growth simply because those houses are full. However, we still have to take into account that part of the reason we've seen a decline in school-age children in some of these older neighborhoods is because those neighborhoods are aging. Not because that's where folks who are empty nesters or retired want to live, but because we don't have anywhere else for them to be. But some of our most affordable housing stock is going to be in that central and west region. So while today there may not be a lot of elementary aged children living in those neighborhoods, for all intents and purposes, as we build new housing and folks have the opportunity to move into an area that fits their lifestyle better, we will see those areas refill as newcomers come to town, likely with young children. So, nobody thinks this is easy, right? This is always a challenge when you've got to do these boundary studies, and we completely understand, especially with changing to a K-5 model. That takes the two fifth and sixth grade centers, which are two of our larger schools, takes those into elementaries. So we completely understand you are going to have an abundance of elementary classrooms. Our goal is just to be a resource to the school board as they look to make these decisions, recognizing that assuming a decline in school population seems a little bit harsh. I just don't see that happening. There are a lot of things weighing into this, no question. We do have school choice. Families can, school districts have to be open to students from anywhere coming in. And they have to provide the resources. If folks can send their children here from anywhere, it's also clear that we can send our children anywhere. So there are things that certainly could impact how many children are enrolled besides just the standard things that we typically would have been concerned with at the time of the last boundary study, for instance. But we want to be able to provide them as much information as they can have so they can make good decisions for our district.
Has anybody thought of, I'm sure you have, but, okay, for instance, St. Mary's is also putting in 7th and 8th grade, and I also heard that St. Dominic's is thinking about doing that also too. So this is going to be taking away from that. Is that the reason we got lower?
They took in the existing enrollment there. I've not seen any notes where they took in any additional loss to St. Mary's or St. Dominic's. Did you?
No, they kind of assume it's stable, parochial, and private school enrollments. It's just kind of a standard thing that they've bought.
Yeah.
I don't know how they actually incorporate that.
So I don't think they looked at it as a special item as far as that
And
goes.
another thing, you said something about single men coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, does a lot of these single men leave their families to come for a job opportunity and then they bring their families later?
Some of them, yes, but a couple of anecdotal things. We heard that, yes, the men came first and families didn't follow until later. But then when it was time for family to follow, they couldn't find housing to accommodate their family, so they ended up moving to Wichita because they had a relative there who had a house available for them. So yes, undoubtedly there's some of that. Some of it is just, specifically with the Afghan population is where we really saw that it wasn't so much whole family units showing up. But to Shannon's point, that has shifted. And now we're getting different refugee groups and they are bringing families. So, and we are hitting, and we can talk about this more after Shannon's had a chance to look at the data, but we're hitting the maximum on our resettlement numbers. each year. So those opportunities are going to
What do you
continue.
mean by maximum?
Yes, so the federal government sets a certain amount that can be resettled in a given region, really to keep from overburdening, if you will, the housing and schools, those kinds of things. But we're hitting those caps each year in our region.
I did not know that.
Yeah, largely because we have jobs. So long as you have jobs available, that's really their primary driver.
What was our peak population, student population? Do you know?
So, I did see it, 7,000, about
7,100%.
71, 72, I believe. If you go, I do know, if you go to the final, like in 5 years, that last number I had here, that was really close, one more, sorry.
76.
That number was really close. Oh, no, that number, 7,000, yeah, 7,175 is really close to our peak population of school,
Historically.
historically. And I believe that was a while ago.
Okay. Any other questions? Interesting.
Thank you.
More
But
stuff next
So
month.
so they've taken into consideration, like, we're going to have empirical opening up, some of these other things that will bring in families?
No.
No.
They say they have, but you don't see it reflected in their projections.
Because their reflections don't include jobs, they include housing units. So even though we know that we have no option but to create those housing opportunities, one of the things that to me is a pretty obvious miss is the East Garden Village. We have over 100 lots with infrastructure ready to go, just short a manufactured home. That's not counted, and I feel like that's probably the biggest miss, because those are easy, right? We can get units and move them in where there's infrastructure and everything in place. So at minimum, when you're adding 1,000 jobs in less than a year, I think you can assume that those will fill. And that's just the one mobile home community. We have other options for mobile home communities as well. So I think there were some pretty obvious misses. And again, certainly not, trying to discredit the work they do, but these are big decisions and could have lasting consequences for us. Beyond that, one of the most exciting things that ever happened was the construction of the high school that we now have, and there was that creates a feeling in the community, that creates a positive drive, if you will, that yes, we're growing and we're building for the future. I am certainly not opposed to repurposing some of our buildings, even if we end up in a position where some of those buildings are not viable for whatever reason, maintenance or whatever. But I think it needs to be approached from a meeting growth perspective versus a how do we die perspective, if you will. And I know that sounds kind of dramatic, but it does make a difference. When we are going to have children in new areas of our county. There's no question. Because of where we're building new housing, there will be children in places where we have not built schools yet. That's something you prepare for and you grow, right? We, from the economic development standpoint, when we are working on these housing developments, when we're recruiting developers for those, we're identifying for them when they are going to have to reserve space. So we're telling them up front, you need to hold 7 acres back for a new elementary school. Assume we're going to need an elementary school if we're creating this much population. Reserve that space. Don't plan it for development. Reserve it so that you can work with the school district when they're ready to build. They've got the land. We're doing everything we can to position the school district to not have to overpay for property that they may need in the future. We can only do that. We can only set the stage for them to do it properly. Obviously, we can't We can't make them do anything to grow our community. But we certainly hope that by providing them with the information, legitimate information about our community specifically, they can make better decisions to continue to grow our school district to support the needs of the population growth.
But
Go ahead.
I thought even our need for housing was even higher than this 6,000 plus that we talked about. I mean, earlier on, I thought it was even higher than that, wasn't it?
No, our goal, since the city commission set their goal in 2021 for 4,000 units, we immediately set ours at 6,000 in the pipeline. So that's been our goal for the last 3 years.
I was saying it was higher than that, but, and on the schools, yeah, like I said, we've done all this work to the high school for vocational and tied into community college and 4 years and so forth, but probably the big part is a lot of the elementary, just because of our more of a transit population that moves in, young families. Has the district looked at anything about remodeling their schools to more fit those demographics, so to speak? Because you got quite a variance there of kids in those elementary schools. And maybe there needs to be a different remodeling of those schools of who goes here and who goes there.
Right, that's what they're working on. That's what the boundary study is to do, is to determine how far can you move kids? You know, and the real challenge
Well,
right
not
now.
just at the transportation, looking more at what's actually taught at the schools. Because when you've got these extremes in those classrooms, probably it's part of the reason why you have a lot of homeschooling going on.
Could certainly be part of it. You know, the goal of these committees is always to look at not just facilities themselves, but also equity. So ensuring that if I happen to live on the west end of town, that my child will have access to the same quality of education that a child who lives south of town or in East Garden City or in Central Garden City. The whole idea of school districts, organized public education, is to ensure that all children within their district have access to the same quality and quantity of education as any child anywhere else in the district. So, yeah, that is the goal of these boundary committees, is to ensure that everybody's getting access to the same quality of education. Equity is a big part of it.
But are you talking about the direction of education as far as teaching more vocational
No,
aspects?
the elementary level, it just seemed like you got 37 different languages spoken.
Yeah.
How do you teach these kids and these kids in the same classroom and make it work?
It's a challenge.
They've done some amazing things.
Well, but I mean,
I would
maybe-
encourage you to go back and watch their board meetings. They do have schools that are spotlighted, and they talk a lot. The last one, actually, the April 15th meeting, I would encourage everyone to go back and watch. Georgia Matthews was the spotlighted school, and you'll get a lot of the answers that you're asking for, how they're coping with the diverse school district that we have. And I would just reiterate, the diversity of our school district is one of our biggest selling points when we're working with projects, when we're working with individuals who are considering moving to the community. The diversity that exists in our school district is absolutely a strength for our community.
What about driving time?
Right, they're taking that into account. That's
Okay.
the idea, right? And that's to my point that, yes, we have schools certainly in the central and the western part of the community that are not full because we simply don't have, we have aging homeowners and renters in those areas.
But what about, obviously, I was more or less talking about the outer limits, because you put a kindergartner on a bus for an
Right.
half hour to an hour, it's tough.
Right, and that's one of their biggest concerns that they're hearing, and that is, again, they show part of their report, the RSP, the company that's doing this consulting report, part of their report will show, okay, if we move the boundary line to here, what is their transportation time? So that's one of the tables that they take into account. The idea, the goal when they started this was that 50% or less of the school population would be impacted by the redrawing. So the goal is to keep as many children going where they're going today as possible. But it's a real challenge in a growing community like this, where the growth is happening really concentrated in one area.
Do you think that, I don't know how I want to say this, but do you think that if you'll have people moving because of
To
education?
get out of the school district,
To get to a different location in the school district.
if that was available to them, people would. That's pretty common in urban communities. That's very common that somebody
It's always
chooses,
been the case here too.
you know.
People want to move, buy a house in a certain
Right.
school district,
Yeah.
school location.
We just don't have
by
the
the-
options for people to do a lot of that right now. Yeah, but certainly, I mean, that's one of the things that does happen when there's an opportunity to do that. Right now, it's not so easy to just pick up and go get a different house, right? So,
I'm curious about the methods that this consulting firm used. I wonder if they even looked at our chat data, or do they just have, it appears to me maybe they have an antiquated model that they use, that they just keep using that, and maybe they should relook at their methods. But I mean, I'm no consultant by any means.
no, the good news is we do have somebody who has a master's in statistical analysis, and we are extremely fortunate that he does statistical analysis of everything
Yes.
that happens within our community and our region. So we did meet with the consultants. They asked to meet with us, and Shannon certainly shared his insights. But again, they were clear that their model is proprietary. And in looking back at the reports, to Shannon's point, that they've been using, it is a plug and play model. It is simply, here's my spreadsheet, I plug in the numbers that it asks for, and then it kicks out data at the other end. What we don't know is is who they have looking at that data, just to question and say, does that feel right? We don't know that. None of them that we've met anyway had statistics backgrounds, as far as we know. So we don't know.
And in their defense, they are looking at how many, going through these reports, I've seen a lot of school districts just recently. So we're talking, they're probably working on probably about 4, 5, 6 other school districts at the same time. And their modeling does typically work.
For a time, anyway.
But this is the same thing we're dealing with restaurants and retail and everybody else. If Kohl's comes in, we say, you need to expect this much money on your CID. They're like, no. We got this, we're gonna do this. And then they come in and are like, hey, we're doing try it twice or 3 times as good as we thought we were going to. Yeah, that's the number that we told you. So, I mean, the model that typically works in 95% of the United States works. We're one of the 1 out of 20 communities where it doesn't work. And when you have a company that's just trying to get through as many reports as possible, it's up to the local community to say, hey, I don't believe these specific things. One of the things that this company did, it was produce that K through 5 model to say, hey, we've seen this research that K through 5 is better. Everybody agrees with that. So, and that's something that does apply to our community. We agree that K through 5 model works just as good as it does in Wichita, as it does in Iowa and all that stuff. But we just feel like some of the things that are specific to our group are things like the new housing that's going to be coming on that we don't have reflected in the past. The refugee community and stuff like that doesn't really mesh. And when we start to put those pieces into our model, since we are a smaller school district, they're going to make a big difference on there. So again, I do think that what they do works most of the time, just not in this case.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, and I would also say, what we don't want, we've tried to be clear about this with the Board of Education members, we don't want it to appear that we're arguing with the consultant. We're just not. We are simply providing the additional information that is, as Shannon said, unique to our community, to our region. So I don't want I don't want them to, to come at this, well, we'll see who's right. I don't think that's what any of this is about. We would anticipate that our numbers will be closer to accurate simply because we have more information than they have. But I certainly hope, and again, the goal of this whole exercise was that we certainly hope that the Board of Education has more information and not less as they seek to make these challenging decisions, tough calls.
But the Board of Education was receptive to all of the information that's been gathered?
They certainly heard it, and we certainly made it available to them. I don't know that I could comment as to what they'll do with the information or whether they understood it. I mean, I don't have any way of knowing that for certain. We didn't have a pop quiz. We'll think about that next time. But we certainly hope so, and we've made it clear that we're available to provide additional information and explain. You guys are fortunate. You're used to hearing Shannon's reports, so we all have a pretty good understanding of how methodology works and where Shannon is getting the information. Not everybody is exposed to that on a consistent basis, so certainly if they need additional information or need additional explanation about how these numbers work, we're happy to provide that as well. Our goal, obviously, and I will speak on behalf of the city as well, our goal is to ensure that our community is as well set as it can be to meet the future growth. And that absolutely would include our school district, and we'll do anything we can to support giving them the information they need.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank
Good
you.
information.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, new business.
You guys are too good. You don't leave business hanging out there. There is none.
Okay, old business.
Nope.
Upcoming events.
Sorry. Fresh out of those too.
Man, we're moving right along here. I guess we're no further comments or questions. We'll move to adjourn, or do we have a need for executive session?
We do. 15 minutes should be plenty. And I will mention, this should have been a 5th-week meeting month, but we chose not to do a 5th-week meeting this month because as we get the workforce connection up and going, Derek and I would like to do a combined meeting where we really dive in to the workforce connection and all the things that will be coming new as we get that organization up and running again. So look for that to happen probably May, maybe early June.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. I have a motion to go into executive session.
We went a little backwards there. That's it.
Make that motion.
Okay.
Was there a
To
second?
executive session.
Yeah,
Did you second that, Sam?
okay.
Okay.
Okay. Adjourn. Thank you, everyone.